where you tuned in from around the country. 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret. Mombasa, you tuned in on, yes, we said that already, Malindi on 97.9, Nyeri on 90.9, and Kisumu, where a lot of action is taking place this morning, 102.5. Our live streams are up, Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And right now, from 8 o'clock, KTN Home. Our audience, Karibuni Sana, thank you for joining us this morning as we get into conversations. Today, finally, we're talking to the police service directly. But before we get into that, Citi's going to set the pace with today's proverb.
When a needle falls into a deep well, many people will look into the well, but few will be ready to go down after it.
Okay. A needle has fallen. We're looking for the needle.
Mm-hmm. Needle, not the biggest of objects.
Now it's in water.
Not just
Okay, we're
water.
assuming there's water in the well.
Well,
Yeah.
I think the well and its depth is the issue here.
Okay.
Water is a secondary consideration. Yes.
Okay.
Now think of the size of the needle in a well. The question that comes to mind, why would I want to
Why
look
would
for
I
it?
even want to
When
look
you
for
at-
it? Lost cause.
Aha. There we get into the heart of the matter. And yet, when you have the needle at hand, it is a useful object to have.
It is. Are you going to fly your flag for us this Madaraka Day?
Well, most certainly.
The toing and froing of the flag continues.
Yes, this 58th celebration will not occur again.
So,
Yes.
if you did not have an opportunity to catch CT toing and froing in a rhythmic fashion, the flag on this Madaraka Day, there you go for our audience on KTN Home. Savor it. It only comes but once. All right. Today, we're having a conversation with the National Police Service. Okay? Specifically, we are looking at the role of the Internal Affairs Unit in ensuring accountability in the National Police Service. And joining us this morning is George Nyali. George Nyali is the head of training at the Internal Affairs Unit, the National Police Service, joining us on the line this morning. And George, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm glad to be on Spice FM this morning.
Karibu Sana.
Thank you.
It's a public holiday and it's Madaraka Day. There's a lot of work to be done, but I think it's very interesting that you choose to be with us this morning talking about roles and how you can ensure accountability. One of the big issues that we've often had to discuss, and thanks for joining us. And as we go into this and delve into it deeply, I'm glad that you could join us. So it's Ndu Oko and Siti Muga in the studio and Wanjiro Gikonyo.
Yes, creeping in.
Creeping in.
Creeping in at this time. Yes,
Right on time.
right on time.
Yes.
I'm going to find a way to connect. There you go, Wanjiro. How are you?
Very well.
Good. You're all right?
I'm doing well.
I'm glad you've been able to join us. Just as we were, starting this off. So George Nyali is the head of training, Internal Affairs Unit, National Police Service. And we're talking today about their role in ensuring accountability for the National Police Service. Right, George? Have I gotten it right so far?
You're very right.
Okay, so like I said, it's Madaraka Day, but you're choosing to have this very important conversation with us today, and we thank you for that. So let's get right into it this morning, George. Accountability in the police service as it stands out right now as a sore thumb. From your point of view, what does that mean?
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you so much. And on behalf of the National Police Service, I want to appreciate Spice Radio FM for giving us this chance to engage with the members of the public and inform them that we now have a fully fledged oversight institution within the National Police Service that basically handles complaints against police officers. As you so said, it's a holiday. And in Nairobi, it's a cold one, given that the weather is so cold out there. But we are happy to be here today because we believe that many members of the public are in their houses, or at least they have time to watch TV and listen to Spice FM. And with that, we shall be able to engage them and just let them know that we have a national police service that is listening to them, and that there's an oversight institution that is there full-time 24/7 to ensure that they receive complaints and then take action against police officers who are found culpable of misconduct.
Okay. In terms of right. So, George, in terms of accountability of the police service, what does that entail?
Accountability entails police officers working within the whims of the law. Police officers have been trained, and we believe they are professional. They know what to do and when to do it. And as they conduct their activities, they must always remember that they do it within the purview of the laws of Kenya. So, yeah.
So we've heard about the Internal Affairs Unit. I must be honest, when we heard about Internal Affairs, it's from movies that I've watched, right? And Internal Affairs doing investigations on rogue police officers, this kind of thing, seeing if you've been out, working outside the law, as it were. And then, of course, playing an oversight role then when it comes to the conduct of police officers within the force or within the service. Does that apply in totality here as well? We never hear about this unit, though, I must tell you, George. We never really hear about this unit and its operations. So I guess it's a good thing today. But are we looking at the same thing? Oversight within the service to make sure that everybody is coloring within the lines?
Okay, maybe before I even answer that question, I should go back slightly to give you an overview of what Internal Affairs Unit entails.
Yes, please.
And I must say that there has been many efforts to reform the police. But my interest goes back to 2007-2008 post-election violence. This is when the police was accused of various misconduct and malpractices, including impunity, excessive use of force, brutality, disregard for human rights, abuse of due process, corruption, you can name them. Now, after the 2007-2008 post-election violence, it triggered comprehensive reform that were constitutional, legal, policy, and institutional. If we can remember, there was a national task force on police reform that was led by Honorable Retired Justice Philip Ransley. Now, this task force was tasked to develop a roadmap for police reform. And so it came up with a raft of recommendations. Actually, there were around about 200 of them. But I just wish to talk about the two that are very critical for the establishment of the Internal Affairs Unit. So one of the recommendations by Philip Ransley was to establish a national police service that was under one command of the Inspector General. Now, this was an improvement or deviation from the previous Kenya Police Force and the Administration Police Force that we used to have. So we now moved to a service. So in the Constitution, these changes were provided for under Article 243, which talks about establishment of National Police Service. Article 244, which actually talks about the objects and functions of the police. And then Article 245, which talks about the command of the National Police Service. Article 246, now which talks about the establishment of the National Police Service Commission. Now, Article 244, which stipulates the functions and the objects of the National Police Service, is one key article that now leads to the establishment of Internal Affairs Unit. Looking at that article, if I may just take us through what it talks about, is that it says police service, the National Police Service should strive for the highest standards of professionalism and discipline among its members. It should also prevent corruption and promote and practice transparency and accountability. The police service should comply with the constitutional standards of human rights and fundamental freedoms. The National Police Service is supposed to frame staff the highest possible standards of competence and integrity, and to respect human rights and fundamental freedoms and dignity. And finally, it's supposed to foster and promote relationships with the broader public. Now, this is where internal affairs draws its mandate. It's established to look into this, ensure that the police works within the wings of the provisions of the Constitution. Now, secondly, there's another recommendation by the task force that recommended the introduction of both internal and external oversight of the police. Now, this led to the establishment of Internal Affairs Unit, which is a subset, actually an oversight arm of the National Police Service. This comprises of police service, police officers only. And then we have the external oversight, which is independent policing oversight authority that consists of members of the public. Now, what informed the establishment of the two is that there was mistrust between members of the public and the police. And you remember the narrative that the police cannot investigate their own. So we had to have an external oversight as an option for those members of the public who are uncomfortable reporting complaints for investigation by police officers. So what we are...
I want to interrupt you briefly, because
Yes.
what you're saying, I find it extremely interesting, because but I want to follow up with it by, first of all, setting a certain background. Tell me, I'm speaking as a layman who doesn't understand this thing completely. I know who the police are, but you mentioned something, Mr. Nyali, about their training. Just could you walk us and our audience through the training? What are police men and women trained in? Just they're trained in, okay, we all know they're trained how to hold and shoot a gun. That one we get, okay? But beyond the gun, what else are they trained in?
Okay. First of all, we have various training for police officers.
Yes.
We have basic recruit course,
Yes.
where these are newly recruited people who are supposed to be trained and transformed into police officers.
Yes.
Now, in the basic training, this cadre of officers are trained about human rights. They are trained about the laws,
Yes.
all relevant laws in the Republic of Kenya, because as you know, police officers are the custodians of the law. They are law enforcers. So they must be aware of the laws, understand them, and be able to practice them. So issues of laws are very critical during this training. Human rights. They are trained on how to handle firearms. They are trained on how to quell violence and riots. They are trained on how to arrest people. They are trained on how to fight crime. Okay, I really don't have the whole curriculum.
Oh, no.
but they are trained.
An overview is sufficient. Just an overview of
Yes.
the areas in which they're trained. And there's a reason why I'm
Yes.
asking for this overview, Mr. Nyali. Because
Yes.
when we are talking about oversight, you are talking about something that all police people who belong to the police force have been trained in and they understand. And so when there's oversight, it's oversight over something that isn't new to them. But before we get there, I want to ask the question, how often do police men and women go for refresher courses? How often are they called back in to be retrained so that they don't forget what it is that they were initially trained when they were cadets?
Okay, we have a provision in the service standing orders that police officers are supposed to be regularly trained
Yes.
to refresh themselves.
Yes.
We always have our police officers get back to our training institutions for refresher.
How regular
But
is this?
This should be at least, we must have a refresher course annually.
Okay.
Yes.
For all people who belong to the police force.
Yes, all officers who belong to the National Police Service are supposed to be trained at least once.
Okay.
But I want to put a rider that we are talking about over 120 police officers. So issues of logistics.
120,000 or 120?
120.
Okay.
120,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we are talking about issues of logistics,
Yes.
where we can't have everybody go to the training institutions at once. But we have our own training that we hold in our other training facilities within the region where our officers can be retrained and refreshed about police duty.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, people who belong to, say, the unit that you are now in, what are you trained in? Are you all police officers? Are you civilians? What is the background?
Internal Affairs unit comprises of police officers.
Okay.
These are basically competent and qualified investigators. They are drawn from all services under the National Police Service. We have officers from Kenya Police Service, Administration Police Service, and the DCI. Now, before these officers qualify to come and serve in Internal Affairs unit, they must apply. And the applications and interviews are very competitive. So those who qualify, given the kind of qualifications that we advertise, once they qualify, they are taken to the National Police Service Commission for vetting.
Okay.
So that at the end of the day, we get officers who are qualified, officers of integrity, officers that did not have dark spots in their service history.
What is your if you were looking at it from a unit perspective right now? We know that you are operating from an oversight position, but what is your assessment of the police service and the way it is operating currently in terms of conduct?
Oh, first of all, I want to say that there has been a lot, huge of improvement in the way police conduct themselves. It's in a way that, okay, first of all, members of the public are aware of their rights, so they are able to point out where police officers are doing wrong. And that should be attributed to the many cases that we have had of late, where police officers are being mentioned that they have done these other things against the law. But so far, with that kind of awareness by members of the public, and also there's proper communication where this information can reach the media, and then people get to know what's happening and what the police are doing. I think that's why we get these many complaints. But to be honest, the police have really tried to do their best, and they are doing that knowing that we have a big brother in the house looking at what we are doing. So we even have the statistics on how they have the improvement that we have noted over time, and we can say that the police are trying to do their best to serve Kenyans in the right way.
Okay. I'm sure we have other questions for you, definitely, and it's starting to brew now. George Nyali is the head of training, Internal Affairs Unit's National Police Service, and we're looking into just basically how your unit works to make sure that the conduct of police is in comfortable situations. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, and we're having a big conversation this morning with the Internal Affairs Unit of the National Police Service. And in the studio today are guest host Wanjiro Gikonyo, Siti Muga, and Ndu Oko. George Nyali is the head of training at the Internal Affairs Unit of the National Police Service, and we're looking at the oversight role that the unit plays to make sure that the conduct of police officers is always in check. And as we went to the break, George, you told us that from where you are sitting, the service has really tried and they've done a good job in terms of keeping their conduct up to par, up to scratch. And so we'll continue with that conversation this morning.
Yes, I think, George, good morning and good to engage. Matters you're in training, I think you also have a big role in PR, because you're giving us a very rosy picture when, the reality out there or the statistics and the sense out there is a bit different. So, for instance, the police service has been number one on the corruption list for several years, for many years. And unless that improved in 2020, the last check in 2019, police service was still toweling at the top of that list. The other thing is that we see during recruitment, there is still a tussle between the administration side and the national police side. So maybe you can tell us really what's happening and how this affects your ability to manage police officers. If you can't agree on who recruits them, then what are the internal conflicts in terms of who manages them? And then lastly, I understand that internal affairs is grossly underfunded, that even access to computers is a challenge. So that maybe in theory there is a very good manual, but are you really able to implement when you're talking about the size and the scope of the problem that you're dealing with?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want us to confine ourselves on issues of oversight. Administrative issues can well be handled by the National Police Service Commission, especially in the areas of recruitment, deployment. It can better be placed there and they can address that issue properly. Mine is simply about oversight and accountability for the National Police Service.
Are you saying administration does not affect how you do your oversight, or is that a sensitive area you'd rather not address?
Yeah, because I do not have enough information about recruitment and how police officers are supposed to be deployed. But of course, definitely, if there's a problem in that area, it also tends to affect the performance of the National Police Service. But I wouldn't wish to address that at this moment. Yes. I wish to confine myself on issues of oversight and accountability for the police.
But then maybe on the issue of corruption, the police service topping in terms of corruption, where does your department come in and what's not working? In terms of the resources you need to do your work, does the internal affairs have adequate resources?
Okay, first of all, on issues of corruption, we are looking at a police service that has had problems since time immemorial, since the colonial times. Our officers have always been on the limelight, being watched by everybody. Everything they do is recorded, is registered, and it's shared. So basically what we are saying here is that the public is able to see details on everything that the police do. The police are the people that we find on our roads controlling traffic and doing all that. So in case a bad police officer gets involved in picking a bribe from a motorist or a member of the public, that one will be seen by everybody. And that actually translates to the figures that we see and the numbers, the positions that we take nationally as being the most corrupt. Truth be said, we have corrupt officers in the National Police Service. And our duty is to ensure that such kind of officers are identified and rooted out of the service so that we can try to limit or have the best serving officers in the Republic of Kenya.
George, is that done?
So the issue, yes.
I have to ask you, is it done? If you receive reports of police officers having gone rogue, for example, or misbehaving, what is done? Because I can tell you from this side, the impression being given is that nothing really is done. If you are aware that there are those who are operating in misconduct, that the most that would happen is a slap on the wrist or a transfer maybe to another area. But I think it would be very interesting to know what the process is. Now this is directly involving your unit. What happens if I call in and report and I say, look, I'm seeing evidence of bribes happening on wherever today, and you're able to ascertain that this misconduct is actually taking place? What happens in that case? Are we looking at prosecutorial matters arising or a proverbial slap on the wrist?
Okay, we are talking about prosecutorial. If the matter borders on criminality, the officer has to be prosecuted. But this is what I would wish to share with the members of the public, that they should not shy off from reporting these rogue police officers. This is the reason Internal Affairs Unit exists. I will be sharing our contacts and how members of the public can report police officers who are involved in misconduct. But generally what I want to tell members of the public is that don't die with your problem. Make sure you report rogue police officers to us so that we can help each other to get the best police service in this country.
George, and isn't it the truth that Kenyans underreport because Kenyans don't trust the police, and so they prefer to suffer with the problem they have, and reporting is possibly going down rather than going up? And then I also am waiting for the answer on resources. How will you conduct your good work, because I believe it's really important work, without the necessary resources? Or maybe now the Internal Affairs has all the money it needs and doesn't need to be included an increase from the budget allocation.
Okay, the issue of resources. No single government entity can say that it has adequate or enough resources. Resources are always limited. IAU suffers lack of enough resources, just like any other department or unit within the National Police Service. So we make use of the little that is available, and I must say that the Inspector General has been very forthright to assist Internal Affairs Unit deliver on its mandate. We have shared the little that is available, but basically I can say that we can't say we have enough, and that's why probably our services have not trickled down to many areas that we are supposed to reach.
George, an ideal situation where you are adequately funded and you're able to function as you like, what would that look like? What would you need to have in order to be able to actually carry out this mandate to its fullest?
Okay, with enough resources, let me use the word enough resources.
Yes, resources are good.
The unit is supposed to devolve its services to all counties in this country. Currently, as we speak, we have only devolved to 4 regions of the country. That's Kisumu, Mombasa, Nakuru, and Nyali, and then Nairobi. So due to lack of resources, we have been limited. We can't expand our services closer to the members of the public, to the county that is required. We are looking at a unit that is has automobiles, the unit that is supposed to respond quickly, the unit that has specialized trained officers who can respond to various different kinds of police misconduct. A fully funded unit is supposed to reflect what the National Police Service ideally should look like.
So funds are needed. And then my favorite aspect, devolution. Because the National Police Service Act anticipates the devolution of the policing function. It anticipates the creation, and I know you don't want to get drawn into policy, of the County Policing Authority. It anticipates the creation of community policing units that are now where the community interacts with the police. This has not happened. There is a lack of political will. From our work, we have found it's a lack of political will, lack of resources, also lack of political will. I think there is a fear that if you create these structures and they are very vibrant, the power will shift. So to what extent do you think it's vital to operationalize the National Police Service Act fully so that communities at the local level are working, more, interacting stronger in a better way with the police and feeding into the county level policing authority?
Yes, Kenya is a country of respectable people who deserve the best. And when I say people who deserve the best, I also mean that they should receive the best police services. My observation is that you get what you want. And if you do not give enough resources, you get services that are not up to date. You get media services. And as we stand here right now, what I'm saying is that if resources can be available, then police will be able to devolve services. Not just the police, but internal affairs unit will be able to devolve its services to the members of the public, deal with them up to the county level and even beyond. Because what we want is that we must be all over the country watching on how police officers are conducting their business.
Maybe we are too preoccupied with what the police don't do, and we forget that what they need to be able to give us the services. So corruption, again, like we were saying in the issue that debt is a symptom, corruption could also be a symptom
of a problem. CT asks this question often, even when we're taking a dig at the police, George. And one of the things that he says often, and I'm going to just bring this in to ask the next question, is that are we really looking at how much police officers are compensated in this country to enable them to do their job? Now, if you're looking at issues of conduct on an internal basis, how do the two correlate? Because if you're asking a police officer to behave him or herself in a certain manner, are you looking at the factors that could essentially influence behavior? Because as a human being, forget about the labels of police officer, this or that. If things that I need for basic survival are not available, it will definitely impact my conduct in whatever sphere of life I am in. Now, here we are having individuals tasked with security and the maintenance of law and order and etc. And if their basic needs are not being taken care of in terms of compensation, it will have an effect on those that you're looking at in terms of conduct. Have you seen a correlation between the two?
Okay. That's a possible question?
Yes.
Yeah, fine. Now, one thing that I also observe is that it can be so frustrating to supervise or oversight a police that is a bit demotivated. Talking about the basics is also key, because when police officers are motivated, they tend to reflect what they're enjoying towards their services. So it would be paramount that those basic necessities, like housing for the police, like having police stations that are modern, and the cells that are okay to hold members of the public, all those things that make our work easier, that can be so good, and it can really motivate police officers to perform well. There's a correlation between being motivated and working against the laws that guide our services.
George, what about...
So I agree with you.
Sorry.
When it comes to motivation.
What about culture? Because we've seen the culture of police, that drives their conduct has come into the limelight because, of course, we thought we only have problems with police in Kenya, police brutality, harassment, abuse of power. But we've seen, for instance, in the United States, equally very bad culture where you might say that police are better remunerated, better supported. So whereas, yes, we agree police need to be supported. There needs to be funding for the institutions of the police. What about the culture, this culture of impunity? Because our police service is rooted, like you said, it has a colonial history, and their exercise of power is rooted in that. The relationship between police and the citizen is one that's very coercive. Has enough been done to stop this?
Okay, thank you. Talking about culture, we are not just looking at the police. We also need to look at members of the public. Now, the police, being the custodians of the law, may not be readily acceptable by members of the public, because the public look at the police as a danger, as a people who are fault-finding, who are fault-finding. So, because generally humans do not love the law. They feel confined. They feel their freedom is being taken away. That's natural, each one of us. And that's why the world over, police officers have issues with members of the public. The issues may not be impunity per se, but that police officers work under very difficult circumstances, trying to enforce a law that is not loved by the very people they are supposed to oversight in terms of the law. So coming back to Kenya, members of the public have a role to play to ensure that we get proper and good services from the police. Let members of the public cooperate with the police. When they are arrested, they should go to the station. They should accept to be taken through due process. They should not try to attempt to bribe the police. Yeah, let them accept to be taken to court. If you are found with a traffic offense, please accept that indeed you are on the wrong, and accept to follow due process until you are fined and then released. So talking of culture, the police, for having been working under very difficult circumstances, seeing members of the public as their enemies, yeah, and the members of the public vice versa, seeing the police as fault finders who just want to make their lives difficult. We can see a development of a culture between the two that needs to be bridged so that we can have people who work to support each other so that police services can be enjoyed by all of us.
Looking at an internal issue now, even with the Internal Affairs Unit, do members of the service see you as the unit as a deterrent then from improper conduct, or do they recognize it? And I think it would be absolutely important, because we look at other places where there's an internal affairs unit and nobody wants to get in trouble, so they behave, essentially. Do they see you as a force to be reckoned with?
Exactly, that's how they see us. But unfortunately, some of them tend to fear. And that's what we want to remove from their mind. They should not fear the unit. Instead, they should see a unit as an institution that is out there to assist them deliver on their mandate.
Actually, the problem isn't even the police unit in my mind, or the police force, or the police service and the citizenry. It is the way we as Kenyans relate to the government. You see, the government is this amorphous body that we feel has not pleasant oversight, but general oversight. And it's like a big prefect who is always looking to find fault with you. So if you have the unfortunate position of being in the police force and you're supposed to enforce these laws, it's not what you're doing. It's who you represent. That is actually the problem. So anything that is deemed negative within the government, unfortunately, the heavy brand of it will fall on the police force. Now, if you come up with that mindset and then you have an internal affairs, you then have not a unit that is considered to be supportive, but a fault-finding unit. And yet, I don't think the internal affairs was actually set to be a fault-finding unit. It's supposed to be a unit that actually supports the activity to ensure that the activity of the police force are what they're supposed to be. But this isn't a mindset of the police. It's a mindset we have as Kenyans. It is how we relate to authority. And unfortunately, you in the police force have the unfortunate job of enforcing this authority. So the heavy burden of fault will be on your shoulders.
Yeah, Siti, I agree with you, because you're talking about centralized power.
Yes.
And centralized power that's not very accountable, because the checks and balances don't work. Now, that's the colonial model. It's a top-down control command structure, and we are trying to then change that into a democratized, accountable, decentralized power structure.
And yet the leadership actually likes that system.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it serves, and there's economic benefits, there's prestige of being known that you're the... So I think the challenge we are facing with the implementation of the Constitution is, how do we do a culture change so that we have very good plans and we have good people who are running departments and have a vision for this democratized, accountable police force, but we are stuck in this old model. And this is happening also with the devolution of, maybe even county governance. That's where our constitution got stuck. And then Kenyans don't fully own it. So I think the question is, how do we unlock? Because the issue you mentioned, George, as you were speaking, and you talked about the need for the communities to cooperate with the police, to work with the police. The county police authority and the community policing structure has civilian oversight structures at the very, very local level that would work with the police station, so that it can even be reporting and tracking reporting, doing the sensitization. So there's a whole vision. But even the implementation of that fell into competition, whether it should be under the administration arm, whether it should be under the police, this other formal police service arm. It fell into contention and has not been funded, has not been rolled out. So our democratic process is stuck. And we possibly need to work together to acknowledge we've come some way. There is some good things, but if we don't safeguard those, we'll lose them.
The police force actually caught in the middle here.
Caught in the middle of it, and you still have to continue. And this is the thing, caught in the middle of all of these things spinning at the same time, and then must still do this job that you've been mandated to do.
Yeah, they're being asked to juggle. And half the time they're juggling things that are actually not under their purview or things they have no control over. Not really. Yes.
Change management.
Yes.
How do we do change management with leaders who don't want change management? Who brings it? Revolution? Is it maandamano?
Actually, the fact that we have internal affairs is revolutionary.
I think so.
When it is clear that there's a need for the police to police themselves or to have oversight over the activities, and you actually set up a unit that actually does that, it's a huge step forward.
Absolutely.
So maybe internal affairs needs to work closer with civil society to advocate for these changes. Civil society, and also there's parts and there's leaders, officials, even within the other arms of the police. So maybe there's need now to work across the sectors to stop saying that civil society, they're always fault
and we are on this side.
And we're on this side. Because we're not going to win at this rate.
Civil society
and media
can be a useful ally, as can the media. Be a useful ally to the activities that you're involved in, Mr. Nyali.
Mr. Nyali, as we are wrapping things up, and I think you mentioned that there's a contact that folks can get in touch with you, and I think it would be important to give that information now as we come to the end of this conversation. For now, I think we've barely scratched the surface of a lot that is needed right now. And I mean, it's clear that it's coming out now that you don't need to work alone, but that there are other sectors of society that can work with you. But before we get to those future conversations, how about you tell us how Kenyans can get in touch for issues that they might have?
Okay, thank you. Just to say something about working with civil society, I must say that Internal Affairs Unit is working very closely with the civil society. We are working with institutions like Transparency International. We are working with the Independent Medical Legal Unit. We are working with the International Justice Mission. We are working with all these other Kenya National Human Rights Commission. We work together to ensure that members of the public are given due services. So about getting to us, members of the public can visit our offices personally. Our offices, head offices at the KCB Towers, Upper Hill. We are based on the 16th up to the 19th floor.
Okay.
Our address, probably I can give you the address. You can also find all this information in our website, www.iau.go.ke. Yeah, but currently our box number at the head office is 1880-00200 Nairobi. Our email address is iau@nationalpolice.go.ke. We are on Twitter. You can find us at National NPS official-KE. We also have anonymous reporting information system where members of the public who wish not to be identified or identify themselves, like the whistleblowers, can report complaints. It's called ARIS. We use the USSD
Yeah.
code, which is *683#. You can also send your complaint through an SMS 40683. We also have a toll-free line where members of the public can report their complaint at 0800721230. We have a WhatsApp line where members of the public can send their videos or pictures of police officers who are found in misconduct
Right.
on number 07587299917.
Thank you very much, George Nyali, for joining us in the conversation this morning. And like we said, just scratch the surface, and there are many more conversations about this that can be had in terms of spreading that information. George Nyali is the head of training, Internal Affairs Unit, the National Police Service. Thank you for joining us in the Situation Room this morning. Asante Sana.
Thank you.